It means so much to me and to this incredible team here to see all of you here for such an important, very important occasion. Before I begin, I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of extra important people here in the room. Randy Weingarten, president of the AFT, Michael Mulgrew. Michael Mulgrew is the president of the UFT, and Governor Andrew Cuomo. I'd also like to acknowledge the bill's sponsors, State Senator Brian Kavanaugh and State Assembly Member Joanne Simon. Thank you both, as well as City Council Member Robert Cornegy. Thank you all for your leadership and your engagement on such an important thing, and I'd like to share a few thoughts about why this is so important, not only the actual bill, but what we're doing here today. As I said, it's a beautiful fall day, and when the governor asked me to come down and speak with him about this, I kind of changed my plans around. We had some family stuff going on at home, and I just felt it was that important. So I drove down here from Sandy Hook to be with you guys because I wanted to be part of this and give it the weight that it deserves. But I'm going to tell you, I was just sharing with Randy that I do have to go home to a family party, and it's constant that when I see all the little cousins together, my little Daniel's absence will be profound, as it always is, but seemingly more so at a family event like that. If you don't know, on Friday, December 14th, 2012, I lost the youngest of my 3 children. This is my son Daniel. He was 7 years old when he was shot and killed in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And since that time, we've seen this horrible atrocity play itself out over and over again in this country. It's not acceptable. And in the absence of leadership from the federal government, it's another reason why we need to applaud Governor Cuomo and his leadership for getting this done here in New York. One of the things that that adds to the pain of having to move forward with the loss of a child is that it was preventable. And there's so much importance in that. I mean, it might sound obvious, as almost all of these gun violence tragedies are, whether it's the daily gun violence that's happening in our cities every day, or these horrible high-profile mass casualty events. Almost all of it is preventable. And I think it brings extra pain to know that this didn't have to happen. But then it brings a whole lot of hope to know that we can prevent this from happening again. We can spare other families from having to live this pain. And that is exactly what this red flag law does. I like to say it's the legislative counterpart to what we do at Sandy Hook Promise, is training students how to recognize the warning signs that we know are there, and then take the next steps to get that person connected to the help that they need before it becomes a tragedy. That's what this law is going to do. It's what it is doing. It's empowering families with the tools and the resources to observe, if they observe a family member at risk of hurting themselves or somebody else, to petition law enforcement to take the firearms and safely store them somewhere else until the person is out of danger. They can petition the court, resume their firearms, and all is well. And you've prevented a tragedy that will have lifetime repercussions. That's what this law does. But it's only as good as the education that comes with it. Having that law in place is great, but if the folks don't know it's there, they don't know they have that tool, then they don't know to enact it and to get somebody help before it becomes a tragedy. That's why we're here today, and that's one of the reasons that I think this is so important, that Governor Cuomo has recognized that we have to educate, and that you guys are here to learn this, and to be here, and to take this message back, like, look, we have this. We can use this. And I guarantee you, from our experience studying our anonymous reporting system, you'll get the reports, and you will get this information, and you will be able to make an intervention and save lives. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, in honor of my sweet little Daniel, I want to send my congratulations and my deep appreciation to Governor Cuomo for passing this law in New York State, and for having the foresight and the courage to round up everybody and say, we got this, we need to learn about it, and we need to implement it and make sure it works and works right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Governor Cuomo.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to thank Mark so much for all your advocacy and for everything that you have done in this horrendous situation, and saying that I can try and my family can try to make life better for others. And I can't thank you enough for your leadership and your constant focus on this and for being here with us today. So thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
To the governor and to my friend Randy. Randy, thank you so much. When Governor Cuomo first called and said, we need to do this. If you ever get those calls, when he goes, we need to do this, you understand, you hear that tone in his voice, like, we need to do this. This has to get done. When I was just listening to Mark, the phrase that caught me the most was a lifetime of repercussions. How many times does another community have to deal with a lifetime of repercussions? Over and over. And every time one of these horrendous incidents happen, I get the phone calls, Randy gets the phone calls, what's your position on this? And everyone wants to talk about all of this stuff that's not getting to the root of the problem. They want to ignore it. Or they want to make money off of it. They want to sell us stuff to put in schools, or they want to arm teachers and do training for that when they don't want to deal with the root cause of the issue, which is why I'm so happy and so proud to stand here today as a New Yorker saying we're going to the issue. We're saying that we want communities to have a way, to have a path, to say there is someone who is having problems. Because every time one of these horrendous incidents happen, we hear the same thing afterwards. There's always the interview on TV. Oh, we knew this was a problem. Well, if you know it's a problem, why are we skirting our responsibility as a society to say, if we know there's a problem, we can identify it, let's not have a lifetime of repercussions. And that's what we're doing here today with this bill. So I thank you all for being here, and I thank the governor again, Randy and Mark, for all that you've done.
So, thank you for the footstool. You know, I don't often come back home and do press conferences at home. I'm often on the road. But I did actually call the governor after what happened in Parkland. And because there's, I spent a lot of time around the United States, but there are a few kind of go-to people in my life. Michael Mulgrew's one of them. Governor Cuomo's one of them. If you actually really want to try to move through lots of weeds on something that's really important, Governor Cuomo is the guy to call to do it. And I was so glad to see the legislature, this legislature, because the last legislature would not have done this.
No, they wouldn't.
We tried, and they didn't. It was this legislature. Elections do matter. Now, why is this so important? There's a lot of things in schools that are really important. But as someone who represents the District of Newtown, which is where Mark has sent his children, including Sandy Hook, and the District of Broward, which is where Parkland is, how many times are you going to get the phone call of the tragedy that then repeats itself for its whole life? It's not just as the parents and the kids who have died, or the teachers who have died. One of the kids at Parkland has now become one of my mentees. And we were at a rally a year ago in Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden there was fireworks. I saw this young woman shrivel up because of what she heard. So how is arming teachers and having more gunshots, or how is having 250 mass shootings this year and not abating them, which, by the way, no other industrial country in the world has this? How does more guns help the situation? All of you in this room know the answer to that. We need to do things, common sense gun laws, there's lots of things we need to do, lots of things other countries have done. But we need to do things like this, like the red flag law. Because what teachers and parents have told me throughout the country in any of these, and like Mark and his family, every one of these situations, people are scarred forever. And we are there afterwards. And what teachers have told me repeatedly is that in the main, kids or young adults who have done this have exhibited some signs. Brady has found that 42% of these perpetrators of mass violence have exhibited signs before. So if you know that, that's why these kind of extreme risk orders are so important. To try and craft something that ensures that you can see someone who may be a harm to him or herself or to others, and consistent with due process, going to a judge, find a way to take away arms that could then hurt others. That's what this is. But 17 states have done this, and when we were in Long Island, I talked about some of the laws that have actually really worked. Like in Connecticut this past August, a man threatened a mass shooting at his worksite. Authorities used the red flag to seize 18 rifles and other weapons from his home. Since the red flag was enacted, since 1999 in lots of different states, 17 states have it, nearly 2,000 risk warrants have been issued. In Middlebury, Vermont, 2 students at Middlebury Union Middle School were planning to shoot another student on campus and anyone else. Another student overheard the conversation, notified the school principal, who then called the police. One of the students was planning to get the guns from a relative. Prosecutors obtained an order and removed 10 weapons, mainly handguns and hunting rifles, from the relative's home. The difference between what Governor Cuomo has done and what our legislators have done than other states, and this is the first in the nation to do this, is that it also allows not just the family and not just law enforcement, but people in schools. And that's really, really important because we really are the first responders to everything. But as Mark said, and this is where I'll close, people need to know how to use it. Because the moment you hear order of protection, what does it mean? What's the due process? We have to know how to use it. And that is why these kind of sessions are so important. This tool will save lives. This tool is what some states are using, particularly this state, to actually create sanity in the United States of America. And when we have someone in Washington who's creating more chaos and more controversy and more churn and more tumult, and when you have 48 million children who suffer from trauma, we need to have the tools that will help keep people safe. Educators and kids want schools that are safe sanctuaries. This tool will help us do that. Thank you, Governor Cuomo.
Boy, some tough acts to follow. First of all, thank you all very, very much for being here. I know it was a beautiful Sunday, the Saturday, the sun is shining, but thank you for being here. Let me begin by thanking Mark once again. Mark has been a great advocate. He's always there when we need him. He's been all across the country. He's been in Washington, D.C. And I have such personal respect for Mark and what he's been able to do. I don't know that I personally could have done what he has done, that you could take that pain, and I believe there's nothing more unnatural than losing a child. And how you have the personal strength to take that pain and turn it into a positive, and not get angry and not go into a shell and not be resentful, but to say, how do I take this pain, turn it into a positive energy to help others? There is no truer sign of strength of character that is almost unbelievable. And that is Mark Barton. Let's give him a round of applause. Randy Weingarten. Randy Weingarten is a New Yorker. You can hear her passion. You can hear her energy. She's now a big shot, national labor leader, but she's still a New Yorker. They always come back home. And she's making great education policy for the nation, and she's advocating for the nation, but she never forgot where she came from. After Parkland, the full chronology, Michael Mulgrew mentioned it, but the full chronology was Randy called me and said, we have to do something. I said, I know. She said, no, let me tell you what you have to do. That is the teacher in Randy. And she gave me some details about the red flag law so that we could have the best red flag law in the United States, and we do. I then turned around and called Mike Mulgrew, and I said, let me tell you what we have to do. I was just the conduit for that. And Michael Mulgrew, who does a great job in this state, representing teachers, but more. He represents the interest of children. He represents the interest of children. He's a child advocate, and he is extraordinary. Mike Mulgrew. Again, Brian Kavanaugh and Joanne Simon, who carried the bill. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you. We have Judge Zayas here and Chief of the Brooklyn DA's office, Nancy Hoppak, who are here. Thank you very much for being here. We have more state officials than I can shake a stick at, but we have our Deputy Secretary for Criminal Justice. The state police are here. You're going to hear from them. And we have our Health Commissioner, Dr. Zucker, and I just want to take a moment to say the Health Commissioner job is a tough job. And, you know, right now they say, well, just make the right decision. Just do the right thing. These are crazy political times, and there's a lot of controversy on everything. And the Health Commissioner had to make a decision on vaccines, whether children should be vaccinated. And the opposition was as ferocious and animated. And they were everywhere you go. Every event, you try to get into your house, and you have to fight your way through people who are demonstrating in front of the house. But Dr. Zucker said children have to be vaccinated when they go to school. He was right. He stood up. He made a courageous decision. Thank you very much, Dr. Zucker. On the issue of guns, we will look back one day in history and we will say, what were those people thinking? What were they thinking? How many times did you have to see the exact same episode and situation before basic sanity and common sense kicked in and overpowered this knee-jerk, nonsensical politics, which is all it is. It's just knee-jerk, nonsensical politics. They're afraid of the NRA. They're afraid of the NRA. And that is stopping common sense legislation, and it's killing people, literally. And we do nothing. Tomorrow is the anniversary of Tree of Life, the synagogue in Pittsburgh. 11 people killed, 7 people injured. What have we done? Nothing. Nothing. And there was absolutely no reason for it, and we know there's no reason. Now, Mark, when you put your head on the pillow at night and you say, why? Why would a loving God do this? Why would a loving God take my beautiful son? There is no answer to it, but maybe you find some peace in the fact that everything for a reason, and what happened in Sandy Hook was heard. And it changed the laws in Connecticut, and it changed the law in the state of New York within weeks of Sandy Hook happening. We passed the SAFE Act. It was politically difficult. It politically caused me personally a lot of negativity. It still does today, because there is passion in the gun issue. Do not kid yourself. There is passion in those people who believe the Second Amendment trumps everything else. And their reading of the Second Amendment trumps everything else. But we passed the SAFE Act, which is the exact same law they're talking about today. Ban assault weapons because you do not need them. Ban high-capacity magazines. Do a full background check on everybody before they buy a gun. Do a mental health database where we now have 100,000 people on our mental health database who before the SAFE Act could have walked in and bought a gun. Think about that. 100,000 people mentally ill who could have bought a gun. We passed the SAFE Act. That does not happen but for Sandy Hook. And the SAFE Act has saved lives in this state. I have no doubt about it. I don't know how many, but I know it has saved lives. And I don't want to jinx us, knock wood, but New York has not had one of these horrific mass shootings that are happening all across the country. And it's not that New York is a simple, uncomplicated place, but the SAFE Act has saved lives, and that does not happen. And the SAFE Act says something else, Mark. The SAFE Act says you can pass this law and legitimate gun owners are not affected. SAFE Act has been in place for over 5 years. People cannot like it ideologically. They cannot like it politically. They can be angry at me because I trampled on their interpretation of the Second Amendment. But nobody's ever come up to me and said, I had a legal right to buy a gun and I wasn't allowed to. Nobody. Nobody has said to me, I'm a hunter and I love to hunt and now I can't hunt. Nobody has said, I love to shoot at a target practice, and now I can't shoot at a target practice. If you are not allowed a gun because you have a prior criminal conviction, then yes, you can't buy a gun. If you're mentally ill, you can't buy a gun. You can't buy an assault weapon, which, by the way, you were never hunting with an assault weapon anyway, because it was illegal to hunt with an assault weapon before any of this. We can do it. And New York is a laboratory test case of, don't tell me we can't do it, because we did it in the state of New York. Yes, it's New York City. It's also that whole big part called upstate New York when you look at the map. And that's all rural communities in upstate New York. And they're primarily Republican, they're primarily conservative, and they are as vehement about the Second Amendment as anyone. But we passed it. And it saved lives, and it didn't infringe on anyone's rights. And that's what you accomplished also, Mark. Now, the next step is the red flag law. And we do have the best red flag law in the United States. And as Randy said, The numbers will vary, but the number of signs, the number of people who wind up using guns in acts of violence, and the percentage of time that they demonstrated signs that alerted people is very, very high, which means something could have been done because the teacher knew that student had issues, or the teacher heard from another student, you know, I'm afraid about this person, I heard this. Family members who are living with a child who they know is going through something and they know could be potentially dangerous, and they know the person has guns, Sandy Hook, and they had no ability to do anything. That's the red flag law. It is a powerful tool which is in your hands, not the bureaucracy's hands. If you're a school teacher, they'll talk about, yes, you should go to the principal or you should go to the supervisor, and then the supervisor goes to a judge. Yes, that's the best way to make it work from an organizational point of view. A teacher themselves can walk out of the classroom and go to a judge. A family member themselves can leave the house and go talk to a judge and ask for an order of protection. It is a tool literally in the hands of the people on the front line. And it is a tool that can save lives if you know how to use it. And that's what today is all about. My last point is this. The many teachers who were here with us today. My mother was a school teacher. My mother would say, once a school teacher, always a school teacher. My mother is 88 years old, but don't tell her I said that. That was off the record, post-fact off the record. And she now does mentoring. She is so committed to mentoring. She's so committed to young people, role models. She has 5,000 kids in her mentoring program, and everything is about mentoring. If she sees me, a clip of me on TV, and I did not mention mentoring, I can't go home for a week. And I'll say to her, yeah, but sometimes it doesn't fit, right? You know, I'll say, Mom, I was talking about climate change. How do I get from climate change to mentoring? They're all connected. It always comes back to mentoring. But God bless her. That's her passion. But she will say how much harder it is to teach and raise a child today than it was. And that is very true. If you are in a classroom, you have students who don't speak the language, you have students who aren't having meals at home, you have students who are coming out of difficult neighborhoods, difficult families. The job of teaching is much, much harder. The job of raising a child today is much, much harder. This is a much dangerous environment than anything we have ever dealt with before. You have kids who can get addicted from opioids from the medicine chest in their own home by taking medications that were prescribed to their parents. Vaping, we're going to be paying the price of vaping for decades to come. We addicted a whole new generation of kids to nicotine, at best to nicotine. After we spent all those decades losing people to cancer, losing people to tobacco, having the lawsuits, I did it when I was Attorney General, coming up with the prohibitions, you can't sell to minors, you can't sell flavors, and now they come up with vaping, which just bypasses everything. And everyone does it because it's cool and it's safe, and everybody does it because I'm young and I want to be with everyone. At a minimum, they get addicted to nicotine. Worst case scenario, they drop dead because of the additives in the vaping compound. Everywhere you turn, we have a subway system now where sexual predators who are repeat sexual predators are allowed back into the subway system. Emotionally disturbed people who are dangerous are allowed back into the subway system. There was the incident the other day where a man pushed a woman onto the tracks. I understand the right to access to public transportation. But have we lost our mind? What happened to balance? And what happened to common sense? And why would you allow children to be riding a subway system with people who you know are known sexual predators who have repeated the act in the subway over and over and over again? Why would you put them in the same condition with people who are extremely emotionally ill? It makes no sense. So the times are more dangerous. And on this gun issue, it is madness that we have not taken action on the federal side. The old Italians have an expression, I can't say it in Italian, but it basically says, we do what we can in life, which means you can't change the world, and we're not empowered to do everything. But our obligation is to do what we can. We have the red flag law. Do what we can. It is a tool in your hands that can save lives, and I believe it will. Thank you for being here, and God bless you.